Prose 5. Then I said, I understand that happiness and misery come to good and wicked men according to their merits. Still, I find that there is a mixture of some good and evil in every man's fortune, as that term is popularly understood. Surely no wise man wants to live in exile, poverty, ignominy. He would rather live prosperously in his own country and enjoy riches, honors, and the exercise of power. The operation of wisdom is manifested more effectively and recognized more clearly when the happiness of those who govern is shared by the people. And this is especially true when imprisonment and other consequences of legal punishment are imposed on the criminals for whom they were intended. Therefore, I am amazed and shocked to find this ideal turned upside down, so that punishments designed for the wicked are imposed on good men, and the rewards of virtue are seized by the wicked. I wish you would tell me how such unjust confusion can possibly be explained, for I would be less surprised if I could believe that all things happened as a result of accidental chance. But my belief in God and his governing power increases my amazement, since he often gives joy to the good and bitterness to the wicked. But my belief in God and his governing power increases my amazement, since he often gives joy to the good and bitterness to the wicked, but on the other hand often reverses this dispensation. How can all this be distinguished from accidental chance unless we understand the cause of it? It is no wonder, philosophy answered, that a situation should seem random and confused when its principle of order is not understood. But although you do not know why things are as they are, still you cannot doubt that in the world ruled by a good governor, all things do happen justly. Poem 5. The man who does not know why the stars of Arcturus turn near the highest pole, nor why slow Boethius travel his chariot to dip his flames into the sea, yet rises again so quickly, must be amazed by the laws of celestial bodies. When the horns of the full moon grow pale, dimmed by the darkness of night, and the stars which Phoebe have obscured with her shining face are now uncovered, popular error excites the people, and they beat brazen cymbals with rapid blows. No one wonders why the storms of Chorus beat the shore with pounding waves, nor why the frozen drifts of snow are melted by the hot rays of the sun. The causes of such natural phenomena are quickly understood, but those others are obscure and disturb the mind. All sudden and rare events bewilder the unstable and the uninformed. But if the cloudy air of ignorance is swept away, such things will seem strange no longer. Prose 6. That is true, I said, but since you cannot reveal the hidden cause of things and throw light on reasons that are veiled in darkness, I beg you to tell me what you know about this apparent injustice which I find so inexplicable and troublesome. She smiled a little and said, You are asking about the greatest of all mysteries, one which can hardly be fully explained. The problem is such that when one doubt is cleared up, many more arise like the heads of the Hydra, and continue to spring up unless they are checked by the most active fire of the mind. Among the many questions raised by this problem are these: the simplicity of providence, the course of fate, unforeseeable chance, divine knowledge, and predestination, and free will. You yourself know how difficult these questions are, but since it is part of your medicine to know these things, I shall try to say something about them, even though our time is short. But you will have to do without the pleasure of verse for a while, as I put together the pattern of my argument. As you wish, I said. Then, as though she were making a new beginning, philosophy explained. The generation of all things, and the whole course of mutable natures, and of whatever is in any way subject to change, take their causes, order, and forms from the unchanging mind of God. This divine mind established the manifold rules by which all things are governed, while it remained in the secure castle of its own simplicity. When this government is regarded as belonging to the purity of the divine mind, it is called providence. But when it is considered with reference to the things which it moves and governs, it has from very early times been called fate. It is easy to see that providence and fate are different, if we consider the power of each. Providence is the divine reason itself, which belongs to the Most High Ruler of all things, and which governs all things. Fate, however, belongs to all mutable things, and is the disposition by which providence joins all things in their own order. For providence embraces all things equally, however diverse they are, however infinite. Fate, on the other hand, sets particular things in motion once they have been given their own forms, places, and times. Thus, providence is the unfolding of temporal events, as this is present to the vision of the divine mind. But this same unfolding of events, as it is worked out in time, is called fate. Although the two are different things, one depends on the other, for the process of fate derives from the simplicity of providence. Just as the craftsman conceives in his mind the form of the thing he intends to make, and then sets about making it by producing in successive temporal acts that which was simply present in his mind, so God by his providence simply and unchangeably disposes all things that are to be done, even though the things themselves are worked out by fate in many ways in the process of time. Therefore, whether fate is carried out by divine spirits in service of providence, or by a soul, or by a whole activity of nature, by the heavenly motions of the stars, by angelic virtue, or diabolical cleverness, or by some or all of these agents, one thing is certain. Providence is the immovable and simple form of things which come into being, while fate is the moving connection and temporal order of all things which the divine simplicity has decided to bring into being. It follows then that everything which is subject to fate is also subject to providence, and that fate itself is also subject to providence. Some things, however, which are subject to providence are above the force of fate and ungoverned by it. Consider the example of a number of spheres in orbit around the same central point. The innermost moves toward the simplicity of the center and becomes a kind of hinge about which the outer spheres circle, whereas the outermost, whirling in a wider orbit, tends to increase its orbit in space the farther it moves from the indivisible midpoint of the center. If, however, it is connected to the center, it is confined by the simplicity of the center and no longer tends to stray into space. In like manner, whatever strays farthest from the divine mind is most entangled in the nets of fate. Conversely, the freer a thing is from fate, the nearer it approaches the center of all things. And if it adheres firmly to the divine mind, it is free from motion and overcomes the necessity of fate. Therefore, the changing course of fate is to the simple stability of providence, as reasoning is to the intellect, as that which is generated is to that which is, as time is to eternity, as a circle to its center. Fate moves the heavens and the stars, governs the elements in their mixture, and transforms them by mutual change. It renews all things that are born and die by the reproduction of similar offspring and seeds. This same power binds the actions and fortunes of men in an unbreakable chain of causes. And since these causes have their origins in an unchangeable providence, they too must necessarily be unchangeable. In this way, things are governed perfectly when the simplicity residing in the divine mind produces an unchangeable order of causes. This order, by its own unchanging nature, controls mutable things which otherwise would be disordered and confused. Therefore, even though things may seem confused and discordant to you because you cannot discern the order that governs them, nevertheless everything is governed by its own proper order, directing all things toward the good. Nothing is done for the sake of evil, even by wicked men who, as I have proved, are actually seeking the good, when they are perverted by wretched error, since the order which flows from the center of the highest good does not turn anyone aside from his original course. But, you ask, what worse confusion can there be than the good to enjoy prosperity and suffer adversity, and for the wicked also to get both what they want and what they cannot bear? But is human judgment so infallible that those who are thought to be good and evil are necessarily what they seem to be? If so, why are men's judgments so often in conflict, so that the same men are thought by some to deserve reward and by others punishment? And even granting that someone can distinguish between good and evil persons, can he, like the doctor examining the body of his patient, look into the inner temper of the soul? The problems of such judgments are similar, for it is a mystery to the layman why some healthy persons find sweet foods agreeable, others sour foods, and why some sick persons are helped by gentle treatment, others by harsh medicines. The physician, however, does not find such things at all strange because he understands the nature of sickness and health. Now, what is the health of souls but virtue, and what is their sickness but vice? And who, indeed, is the preserver of the good and the corrector of the wicked but God, the governor and physician of men's minds, who looks into the great mirror of his providence and, knowing what is best for each one, causes it to happen? Here then is the great miracle of the order of fate. Divine wisdom does what the ignorant cannot understand. I shall limit my discussion of divine judgment to a few things which human reason can comprehend. The man whom you think most just and honorable may seem quite otherwise to the providence which knows all things. Thus, my disciple Lucan observed, although Cato favored the side of those who were conquered, the gods favored the conquerors. Therefore, when you see something happen here contrary to your ideas of what is right, it is your opinion and expectation which is confused, while the order in things themselves is right. Take, for example, the man so fortunate as to seem approved by both God and men. he may actually be so weak in character that if he were to suffer adversity, he would forsake virtue on the grounds that it seemed not to bring him good fortune. Therefore God in his wise dispensation spares the man whom adversity might ruin, so that he might not suffer who cannot stand suffering. Another man who is perfect in all virtues, holy and dear to God, may be spared even bodily sickness, because providence judges it wrong for him to be touched by any adversity at all. As one who is better than I put it, the body of the holy man is made of pure ether. It often happens that supreme rule is given to good men, so that infectious evil may be held in check. To others, providence gives a mixture of prosperity and adversity according to the disposition of their souls. She gives trouble to some whom too much luxury might spoil. Others she tests with hardships in order to strengthen their virtues by the exercise of patience. Some people fear to undertake burdens they could easily bear, while others treat too lightly those they are unable to handle. Both types are led on by providence to find themselves by trials. Some have earned worldly fame at the price of glorious death. Others, by not breaking under torture, have proved to the world that virtue cannot be conquered by evil. No one can doubt that such trials are good and just and beneficial to those who suffer them. Moreover, the lot of the wicked, which is sometimes painful and sometimes easy, comes from the same source and for the same reasons. No one wonders at the troubles they undergo, since everyone thinks that is just what they deserve. Such punishment both deters others from crimes and prompts those who suffer it to reform. On the other hand, the prosperity of the wicked is a powerful argument for the good, because they see how they ought to evaluate the kind of good fortune which the wicked so often enjoy. Still, another good purpose might be served by the prosperity of the wicked man. If his nature is so reckless and violent that poverty might drive him to crime, providence may cure this morbid tendency by making him wealthy. When such a man recognizes his viciousness and contrasts his guilt with his fortune, he may perhaps become alarmed at the painful consequence of losing what he enjoys so much. He will then change his ways and behave himself as long as he fears the loss of his wealth. Some who have achieved prosperity unworthily have been driven by it to well-deserved ruin. Some have been given the right to punish so that the good might be tested and evil punished. For just as there is no agreement between the just and the unjust, so the unjust themselves cannot get along together. And why not, since such men are at odds with themselves and their vicious consciences, and often regret their own foolish actions. From this condition, the highest providence often brings about the miracle by which the wicked make other men good. For when they find themselves unjustly persecuted by vicious men, they burn with hatred against them, and return to the practice of virtue, because they cannot bear to be like those whom they hate. Only to divine power are evil things good. When it uses them so as to draw good effects from them, all things are part of a certain order, so that when something moves away from its assigned place, it falls into the new order of things. Nothing in the realm of providence is left to chance. But it is hard for me to recount all this as if I were a god, for it is not fitting for men to understand intellectually or to explain verbally all the dispositions of the divine work. It is enough to have understood only that God, the creator of all things in nature, also governs all things, directing them to good. And since he carefully preserves everything which he made in his own likeness, he excludes by fatal necessity all evil from the bounds of his state. Therefore, if you fix your attention on providence as the governor of all things, you will find that the evil which is thought to abound in the world is really non-existent. But I see that you are weary from listening so long to this extended and difficult discourse, and want to be refreshed by poetry. Listen then, and gather your strength for what is yet to be explained. Poem 6. If you wish to discern the laws of the high and mighty God, the high thunderer, with an unclouded mind, look up to the roof of highest heaven. There the stars, united by just agreement, keep the ancient peace. The sun, driven by red fire, does not impede the coal circle of Phoebe, nor does the great bear driving its course at the world's top hide itself in the western ocean. It never wants to drown its flames in the sea, though it sees other stars plunge beneath the waves. The faithful Hesperus announces the approach of night at the assigned time. Then, as Lucifer, it brings back the warming day. Thus mutual love governs their eternal movement, and the war of discord is excluded from the bounds of heaven. Concord rules the elements with fair restraint. Moist things yield place to dry, cold and hot combine in friendship. Flickering fire rises on high, and gross earth sinks down. Impelled by the same causes, the flowering year breathes out its odors in warm spring. Hot summer dries the grain, and autumn comes in burdened with fruit. Then falling rain brings the wet winter. This ordered change nourishes and sustains all that lives on earth, then snatches away and buries all that was born, hiding it in final death. Meanwhile, the Creator sits on high, governing and guiding the course of things, King and Lord, source and origin, law and wise judge of right, all things which he placed in motion. He draws back and holds it in check. He makes firm whatever tends to stray. If he did not recall them to their true paths and set them again on their circling courses, all things that the stable order now contains would be wrenched from their source and perish. This is the common bond of love by which all things seek to be held to the goal of good. Only thus can things endure. Drawn by love, they turn again to the cause which gave them being. Prose 7. And now, said philosophy, do you understand the implications of what I have told you? What do you mean, I asked. That all fortune is good. But how can that be, I said. Look here, philosophy answered. Since all fortune, whether sweet or bitter, has its purpose, the reward or trial of good men or the correction and punishment of the wicked, it must be good because it is clearly either just or useful. Your reasoning is true, I said, and your explanation is sound, especially when I consider what you have taught me about providence and fate. But if you don't mind, we ought to put this among the doctrines which you not long ago called surprising. Why so? Philosophy asked. Because people ordinarily hold that some men suffer bad fortune. You mean that you want to accommodate our discourse to the common speech so that we will not move too far from ordinary human ways? Yes, if you don't mind. Well then, do you agree that whatever is profitable is good? Yes. And that whatever tests or corrects is profitable? Yes. And therefore good? Yes. This then is the situation of the virtuous who struggle courageously against misfortune, or of those who are trying to reform and become virtuous. That is quite true, I said. And what about the prosperity which is given to good men as a reward? Do ordinary people think that bad? No, they rightly consider it to be very good. Well then, what about the adversity which restrains the wicked by punishing them justly? Quite the contrary, I answered. They consider that the worst fate that can be imagined. They notice that by following the popular opinion of people who have arrived at a most surprising conclusion. How so? I asked. Our argument has so far proved that fortune of the virtuous or of those who are advancing toward virtue is good, whatever it may be, but the fortune of those who continue in wickedness is bad. That is true, I said, but no one would dare say it so. A wise man ought not to regret his struggles with fortune any more than a brave soldier should be intimidated by the noise of battle. For difficulty is the natural lot of each. For the soldier, it is the source of increasing glory. For the wise man, it is the means of confirming his wisdom. Indeed, virtue gets its name from that virile strength which is not overcome by adversity. And you, who are advancing in virtue, should not expect to be weakened by ease or softened by pleasure. You fight manfully against any fortune, neither despairing in the face of misfortune, nor becoming corrupt in the enjoyment of prosperity. Hold fast to the middle ground with courage. Those who fall short or go too far are scornful of happiness and are deprived of the reward of labor. You can make of your fortune what you will, for any fortune which seems difficult either tests virtue or corrects and punishes vice. Poem 7. Agamemnon, the avenging son of Atreus, waged war for 10 years until, by devastating Troy, he purged the dishonor done to his brother's marriage. When he wished to fill the sails of the Greek fleet and bring back the winds by a bloody sacrifice, he put off the role of father and, as a sorrowing priest, cut the throat of his daughter. Ulysses mourned his lost comrades, whom fierce Polybus, lying in his dark cave, had devoured into his vast belly. But the monster, driven mad by his blinded eye, repaid those former tears with joy. Hercules is famous for his hard labors. He tamed the proud centaurs, won the spoils of the fierce Nemean lion, shot down the Stymphalian birds with his sure arrows, stole the golden apples from the watchful dragon, and shackled Cerberus with a triple chain. He conquered Diomed and fed the savage mares their cruel master's flesh. He burned the Hydra's poison heads, shamed the river Achelous by breaking his horns, and made him bury his face in the banks. He killed Antaeus on the Libyan beach and slew Caucus to slake the wrath of Evander. The boar marked with foam those shoulders which were to bear the weight of heaven. For his last labor he bore the heaven on his strong neck, and for this he won again the prize of heaven. Go now, strong men, follow the high road of great example. Why slack off and turn your backs? When you overcome the earth, the stars will be yours. Book 5, Prose 1. When philosophy had finished her song and was about to turn to the discussion of other matters, I interrupted, saying, Your exhortation is a worthy one, and your authority is great. But I know from experience that you are right in saying the question of providence involves many other problems. I should like to know whether there is any such thing as chance, and if so, what it might be. I have been trying as quickly as possible to carry out my promise to show you the way back to your true country. These other questions are somewhat beside the main point of my argument. Even though they are quite important in themselves, I shouldn't want you to become so wearied by side trips that you would not be able to complete the main journey. Please do not worry about that, I said, for it would comfort me to understand things in which I take the greatest pleasure. When every part of your argument is convincingly established, none of its implications will cause any doubt. I will do as you ask, she replied, and took up her explanation. Again, if chance is defined as an event produced by random motion and without any sequence of causes, then I say that there is no such thing as chance. Apart from its use as the present context, I consider it an empty word. For what room can there be for random events since God keeps all things in order? The commonplace that nothing can come from nothing is true, and old philosophers never denied it, though they did not apply it to the effective cause of things, but only to the material subject as a kind of foundation of all their reasoning about nature. But if anything should happen without a cause, it would seem to come from nothing. And if this cannot be, chance, as we defined it a moment ago, is impossible. Then there is nothing which can rightly be called chance, I asked. Does nothing happen fortuitously? Or is there something to which these words refer, even if it is not rightly understood by ordinary people? My true follower, Aristotle, gave a brief and sound definition of chance in his Physics. What did he say? I asked. Whenever anything is done for one reason, but something other than what was intended happens on account of another reason, it is called chance. For example, when a man digs the earth with the intention of cultivating it and finds a treasure of buried gold, this is thought to happen by chance. But it does not come from nothing, since the event has its own causes, whose unforeseen and unexpected concurrence seems to have produced an effect by chance. For if the farmer had not dug the ground, and if someone had not buried his gold in the spot, the treasure would not have been found. These are the causes of the fortunate accident, which is brought about by the coincidence of causes and not by the intention of the person performing the action. For neither the man who buried the gold nor the man who was cultivating the field intended that the money should be found. But, as I said, it happened coincidentally that the farmer dug where the other had buried the money. Therefore, we can define chance as an unexpected event brought about by a concurrence of causes which had other purposes in view. These causes come together because of what the order which proceeds from inevitable connection of things, the order which flows from the source which is providence and which disposes all things, each in its proper time and place. Poem 1. The Tigris and Euphrates flow from a single source in the Achaemenian rocks, where the Parthian warrior turns his flight to shoot his arrows into the pursuing enemy, but they quickly flow apart in separate streams. If they should join their waters again in one channel, all that each stream carries could come together. The boats that sail on each, the floating trees torn up by floods, and the waters too would mingle by chance, but steep channels in the downward flow of the current govern these seemingly random events. Chance too, which seems to rush along with slack reins, is bridled and governed by law.